an upcoming report, CSD zooms in on the anti-democratic challenge through a comparative focus on the main Russia-sponsored disinformation messages and the corresponding ability to tackle authoritarian state-driven disinformation in 4 European countries: Bulgaria, Poland, the Czech Republic and Germany. We evaluate the disinformation response capacities of these countries on 3 main levels: government, civil society, and international institutions, and we further detail key resilience assets and liabilities. We look at disinformation narratives in 4 types of media: Russia-owned, pro-Russian locally owned, mainstream local, and local political outlets. Kremlin disinformation flows exhibit important similarities. There is a set of common narratives that are disseminated in the pro-Russian outlets in Bulgaria, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Germany. This amounts to the creation and diffusion of a pro-Kremlin, anti-democratic, ultra-conservative discursive ecosystem. This ecosystem is aimed at damaging the democratic fabric of the EU and at aggravating existing polarizations and governance gaps within EU societies. Hence, Russian disinformation can be found on any media in the 4 European countries, but still, there are differences in propaganda dissemination among 4 types of outlets. Those outlets that are directly owned by Russia are distinguished by the most straightforward and aggressive promotion of Kremlin messages. Partisan outlets provide a party-favoring spin on the otherwise strict adherence to the dissemination of Kremlin propagandist messages. Kremlin messages are favored because they typically provide support for the powerful of the day and are particularly taken over by parties with pro-authoritarian stances. Broader dailies feature a less inequivocally positive image of Russia, mixing pro-Russian and pro-Western coverage. Yet, there is a very high share of cognitive capture in Europe for a variety of reasons, such as the high acceptance of Russia overall in Bulgaria, the existence of high-level political support in Czechia, business and historical interest in Germany, and current political interests in Poland. And finally, independent outlets provide a wider, critically evaluated context of Russian rhetoric and actions. Still, even they can be pressured to self-censor if they feel they would get rebuffed for taking too strong a stance by their readers, by powerful advertisers, or by governments, which provide financing.
Apart from the commonalities and differentiations in narration and styles of message transmission applicable across types of outlets, there are additional country-specific features of the pro-Russian and democratic discourse peddled across Europe by the Kremlin. In Bulgaria, the deeply entrenched and long-standing political and economic Russian influence also conditions a considerable media foothold exercised through local oligarchic proxies who are financially and politically related to Russia and formally and informally control the editorial policy and ownership structures of influential national media. Yet Bulgaria's membership in the European Union and NATO prevents a ubiquitous dissemination of Russian narratives, as participation in the European policy and discursive sphere also informs the national media agenda. Still, the Bulgarian public, being one of the most pro-Russian in Europe, is a frequent target of Russian disinformation and propaganda, which then spills over into the country's political positions, perceptions, and debates.
In the case of Poland, the historical animosity to Moscow conditions acute vigilance of Kremlin political and economic initiatives. The permeation of Russian anti-democratic narratives into the Polish media landscape is therefore not primarily the product of a deliberate local strategy and public demand for Russia-originating information. Instead, there is a coincidence of narratives whereby pro-Kremlin messages are able to enjoy larger traction to the extent that they overlap with domestic Polish conservative discourse and the political priorities of the ruling party. The problem-laden history of Poland's relations with Ukraine and Germany still agitates layers of Polish society and represents an opportunity for the Kremlin to sow division within Europe.
In the Czech Republic, long-running and entrenched Euroscepticism represents a natural conduit that enables Russian influence. In addition, concentration of media ownership in the hands of few powerful oligarchs, some with very high political connections and with business interests in Russia, further weakens media independence. At the same time, the high-level political support for the maintenance of extensive political economic ties between the Czech Republic and Russia coming from President Zeman facilitates a political and social scene receptive to Russian disinformation messages. The latter are most conspicuously spread by a web of mostly anonymous websites whose political and financial connections to Moscow cannot, however, be easily traced or verified.
As regards Germany, Russian influence is mostly channeled through business networks of influential interests, as well as historical feelings of guilt and internal political divisions. Germany is also naturally favoring a more moderate stance, provided it is the leading EU voice on the international scene. Its position vis-à-vis Russia's much more aggressive stances seems weak or is taken as a sign of weakness and hesitation. Germany has a history of Putin-verstehers or Putin understanders. They're made up of individuals who promote collaboration with Russia and who can be found in both mainstream and fringe sections of German business and politics. Moreover, the anti-American undercurrent in German society accuses American foreign policy of being imperialistic and militaristic and calls for an independent European political stance. Pro-Russian disinformation narratives in Germany thus place an overwhelming focus on the depiction of globalization and liberalism as economically threatening and anti-national.